We have labels for everything in our culture. We label all kinds of stuff. We have demographics like dinks. Anybody in the advertising business know what a dink is? A dink household, double income, no kids. I mean, we have, and then of course there's the boxes. I've recently gone into a different box. I'm kind of impressed about that. But we have these boxes, and the boxes are, 1834, 2449, 3549, 3554. We have boxes, 54 plus. We have a lot of boxes. And where you fit into that box sort of determines how you're marketed to. And it's done that way because up until this year, literally, maybe middle of last year, but certainly this year, 2009 for sure, it's the only way they could market to you. If I have a one-to-many communicative situation where I am going to broadcast something on television, on the radio, one person using the magic of technology gets the exact same message out to as many people as possible, I really don't know what happens to that message after I send it. Nielsen tries to measure it, they talk about demographics, but they don't really know who, how, what, where, why. They make it all up. Now, if you think I'm kidding, there's a great quote from 1922 by a guy named John Wanamaker who said, "Half my advertising works, I just don't know which half." He was a merchant in the New York City area. Wanamaker no longer exists, but he's a pretty smart guy. That waste model, that sort of funny way to get stuff out there, just to get stuff out there to broadcast it, is a complete artifact, completely caused by technology. For example, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, I'm living in a town somewhere, and I go across the hill, and I see a fire, and I come running back, and I tell everybody in my town, hey, there was a fire, and a small crowd gathers, and I have this incredible news about this fire. There's no narrative to the story. I could be babbling like an idiot. I'm all excited there was a fire. It's a fully interactive conversation. Everyone in the group around me gets to talk to me. What was the fire like? Whose house burned down? Where was it? What happened? Did anybody... Could go on just a back and forth dialogue until we've exhausted it. We talk about it at night, drink a little, think it's a better story. It was a one-to-one conversation, or one to a few, but it was a group dynamic at the very best. That got formalized in the city of Ephesus. If you go to Kuşadası, Turkey, you'll see a bunch of amphitheaters in that town. It's really interesting. There's a 7,000-seater, there's a 14,000-seater, there's a 27,000-seater. Every single person in the town was guaranteed a seat every night. And they would hear a political debate, an oration, a concert, and the acoustics in those amphitheaters are fantastic. But what's more interesting is that every single person had a common, shared experience. Now, we don't know anything about the conventions of that environment, but I'm going to guess that anybody who was a fairly high rank in that society could talk directly to the performer on stage at any time, or engage in the debate at any time, because that's the environment they were in. Fast forward to the 20th century, where we have one-to-many communication, and we needed to invent a narrative. Why? Because we had no control over the conversation. And so I needed to create a thing called a story arc, which I stole from great literature. How do I do it? I'm going to write a newspaper story. Who, what, where, when, and why. How many people had that in school? You have to do all these things, and this is the order it goes in. Why? Because no one can ask a question of the screen. If I'm broadcasting something out, I must craft the entire narrative so that the question as it comes to your mind is answered. What happened? Who did it happen to? Where did it happen? Every question that's going to come to your mind, I have to think about in advance, and I need to craft my story that way to get it out to you. That is 100% of that. Now, there's a bunch of ways to do it. Sometimes you see an anchor desk, right? And then there's a reporter in the field. And maybe the anchor and the reporter will talk. So the anchor's job is to ask the question that you, the audience, would ask because the reporter screwed up and didn't tell them all the information that they know you need. Sometimes they present a show. They do it in front of a live studio audience. Why? The audience does what you would do if you were there. And the audience interacts. Sometimes there's a guest. Sometimes there's an interview. We've got a lot of different tools we use to force the one-to-many environment into a fake one-to-one environment. And we've been very successful at it. So successful that the form factor of a television commercial, the ultimate marketing module of our time, the purest, most expensive $3 million Super Bowl message-managed commercial, is a complete encapsulated communication. It's 30 seconds of exactly what the advertiser wants, color-corrected, shot by a phenomenal director, edited by somebody who's schooled in the art, and it costs a fortune, and it gets to everybody. it's a thing of the past. Because starting about 18 months ago, we hit 50% broadband penetration in the United States. And that means that almost everybody who wants to have a computer, who wants to be able to be online, can now put themselves in a one-to-one environment again, no matter how many people are involved. It's a conversation that's starting over again. This is a sociological shift, and it requires a massive behavioral change. And tonight we're going to talk about that behavioral change and what it means to you and what it means to your business. Because for the first time in literally a century, and 100% first time in any of your lifetimes, you now are working in a two-way conversation where you don't necessarily know that you have control of both sides of it. It's not like you send out a press release and you don't know what happens to it anymore. Someone clicks on it, you know that a behavior's been demonstrated called clicking on my press release. And what did they do? You send down an email. You know, a girl, a really smart girl, who truly broke my heart, once said to me after I made a comment that, let's just say, I'm really, really, really sorry if you're out there that I made this comment. You know who you are, and you might be in this room. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, you know, Shelley, certain things can't be unsaid. I didn't think her butt looked that big, but she asked me, and I just had to answer. I don't know, those jeans really looked horrible on her, and I'm sorry, that's just what came out. On the internet, when you publish something that says her butt looks too big, it never goes away. It is there till the end of time. You will be the guy who said her butt was too big. That's not necessarily good for you. It just isn't. So let's talk a little bit now about social media, social networking, and the sociology that is part and parcel to this new set of behaviors that all of us have no choice but to embrace. First of all, let me just set the stage for you, just one more little bit. Everyone in this room looks to me to be of a certain age, so you're all going to remember that time in 1985 when someone said to you, what's your fax number? And your answer was, I don't know, we're getting a fax machine really soon. In 1990, the same question was asked of you, and you rattled off your fax number, boom, and you said, it's right here on my business card. And some of you who really were in 1990 not really playing exactly the kind of pool in chess you should be playing would look at your business card, fake the fax number, and then hand them the card. But it was on your business card. By 1995, you could not imagine doing business one day in your life without a fax machine. You had one at home. You had one in the office. Sometimes whole groups had their own fax machine. You could have several fax machines. Plain paper fax machines were starting to happen. We were done with thermal paper. Fax had taken on an entire, it was the behavior. Send me a fax. And it made us faster communicators, not necessarily more effective communicators. I love the old days when there was messenger service, snail mail, and you could send a contract to somebody, and it came back a day later or 2 days later. They fax it to you, they're expecting you to sign it right now, read it and sign it. Like I got nothing else to do in my life. Fax changed the speed of business, not necessarily the effectiveness thereof. 1995 is a funny year because that's the year someone asked you, hey, what's your email address? And you said, we're getting your email really soon. By 2000, it was on your business card. Some of you still have that email address. It's cutepuppy43@AOL.com. We're going to have to do something about that. By 2005, you could not imagine one day in your professional life that email wasn't a part of. You're carrying it with you in your BlackBerry or your iPhone. Your PDA is 100% email compatible with your system. You are using a web-based mail client. You probably have 5 or 6 email accounts, and if you don't, well, let's just say you have a very confused secretary. We live in a world where those technologies are just part and parcel to doing business. I would ask you to think back for just a minute what a pain in the butt it was to learn Outlook. Or Eudora, God help you. Back in the day when someone threw the email client on your desk and they said, hey, we got this new cool thing, it's called email. And you're like, Jesus, I'm trying to do business. What is this? Somebody print this out, I want to read it. Back in the day. And ultimately, you sat yourself down and you forced yourself to make it part of the fabric of how you do life. The doing of work life became just part of what you do. That's it. I'm in the email business. That's great.